I recently did a video on the Gates belt drive and the various ways of using it. In this video, I'm going to cover a different technology. This is also a carbon drive. A lot of you have known about this, but I wanted to look into it in depth. I want to compare it to other options you have, including the Gates carbon drive, including the kinetics. And I want to look at how all of the bikes I've been recommended on this channel. I want to also cover how many of the bikes I have been recommending would have implemented a belt drive solution and the advantages and disadvantages of doing this. Here is the company. The company name is VEER. I'm not sure where this product is made, but it looks like a good quality product. It is the same kind of thing that you see with the Gates carbon drive. Here is the Gates system, but you do see that even though both of them are carbon fiber based belt drive systems, they are designed differently. So when you look at the belt itself, it is not the same. It seems to me that the VEER is a wider belt with bumps on it that are quite a bit different. The Gates system is much more rounded, and it has a center stabilizing gap, something I don't necessarily see here, although I cannot see it on this picture. But here is the product close up. It says Shimano and Japan, but I'm not sure if VEER is actually a Japanese product or not. It doesn't seem to have the center stabilization that I see on the Gates. This is an installation on a bike that clearly was not designed for a belt drive. If rear triangle was designed for it, then there would have been a tensioner element in it. So the gap, instead of pointing down, is pointing backwards, which permits you to pull the center of the wheel back as much as you need to get adequate tensioning. So you don't need a tensioner. You also see that this is the VEER belt, and there are all these rivets here, whereas the rest of the belt does not have those rivets. What this means is so that it's impossible that this section would not feel and perhaps even sound different from the sections that have no rivets in them. You can see this from sideways. This is how you are rolling over the parts that have metals in them, and then there is the rest of it that does not. Isn't that gonna feel different? Yes, it will feel different, and that's why they have this V shape to very gradually move the user away from the pure carbon fiber plastic part into the part that contains metal rivets. And this is a more clear view of it. You can see how the ends that join together become narrower, and this part slides into the center of this other end. Even if you look at the chain wheels, they look totally different from what you would get from the Gates system. Obviously, you cannot use the two systems interchangeably, nor do you really need to. You get a tool when you get a kit. Gates typically sells not kits but components. Some companies have made it into a kit. That's true of kinetics as well. And make sure to be checking my links below, because I will give you a lot of resources, including links to some of the videos I have done on the subject that might be useful for you. The price is not cheap, $500, but it seems to include everything. And look at the size, it goes up to 72 teeth. That is 20% over my 62 chain ring. And if you're running a 40 or a 50, that is going to be even more. The rear cog, unfortunately, is more than twice the size of what I have. And if you have read my book, you would understand that the smaller the rear cog is, the faster the bike is going to move. But this is the inverse on the chain wheel, where you want it to be larger if you want more speed. A smaller front chain wheel is going to reduce your gear inches. Now here is an installation that I would look at. This is the Van Move. That's a Dutch bike. As you might have noticed, the Dutch do not like small wheel bikes. They have big, simple bikes with big tires and wheels. You can see that this is a Schwalbe Big Apple. It has 2 inches of width. It's very comfortable. That's because Dutch towns are very old. They have very old natural stone pavements everywhere. In fact, I rented a bicycle in Amsterdam. I took my scooter over there. The scooter is impossible to use. In most areas, there is nothing. In some areas, I could get on the very edge of the sidewalk, and then there was some modern paving only 4 inches wide or so. And so I tried to suffer with that, but it didn't really work. Now notice that this is one of those VanMoof bikes that has a chain-based drivetrain, but it is mostly covered. It is not fully covered. If it was fully covered, this whole area would be covered with either a plastic or a metal case that covers this entire part. In this partial covering, you still get mud and dirt coming into the cog, and once it comes into the cog is going to transfer it to the rest of the chain, so it's not as clean as it looks, but it certainly does slow down the deterioration of the chain. It's also making it very hard to lubricate, or not even so much to lubricate, but to clean the chain, because you would have to disassemble this housing. Now in this video, which I'm also referencing below, you see how he takes apart the housing, and it's interesting that this attachment can be used to install a tensioner, which is going to come in handy. So they remove the whole casing, they remove this little adapter part, but he has the screws there. And I don't know if VEER sells tensioners or not, but certainly the casing is not going to be used. Also, with the Gates drive, you don't have to remove everything. It's simply just a chain wheel that screws into your existing Brompton Birdy, whatever standard crank. That's not the case here. He is removing everything, and he installs a tensioner. Was this tensioner purchased from VEER, or is this something custom made? I have no idea. But you can see on the wheel that it's gonna work with the belt just fine. It is a smooth little wheel that's gonna push the back of the belt, not the front. And here is how he installs the rivets. And he's using this tool that comes with the kit apparently. And the only way to tension this belt is to install a tensioner like this with a spring. It does not seem like a very difficult installation. Probably anybody could do it in a couple of hours. I do like this part, how he's pushing the back of the belt, which is probably the easiest way of doing it. You might even be able to use a standard tensioner and just replace this wheel. Here is another installation. This one is on an electric bike. So there's going to be a lot more pressure exerted on the belt. Some people have made insane claims of using a belt drive for 100,000 miles. If that is true, that would be great. I don't think I've covered 100,000 miles on all of my chains with the current bike. But the installation was relatively easy. And this is just a standard bike. You can see that the triangle is not broken. You actually have to break the belt to get inside the triangle. And you see the rivets and how different this section looks from the rest of it. It is also a wide belt, so if you don't have much space, which I think might be the case with the Birdy, then this might be too wide to replace the chain, so you might not be able to do an upgrade. Here is the Brompton Standard, this one with an external cassette and several sprockets, so this is not necessarily your case, but you do have a tensioner on any of the Bromptons. You need it because of the fold, and there is plenty of space around here to install a belt drive on the Brompton. And this is the Kinetics installation. I should point out that some people get a triangle from Kinetics, which you have to have because this is the Gates carbon system. As you can see on these screws, this triangle is not a single piece, it breaks. You have to remove some of these screws, and then an opening opens up, and that's how you install or remove a Gates carbon belt. This is different from the VEER, and of course installing these screws means that the rear triangle is now broken. It's not going to be as sturdy or as stiff as it would be without the brake. This is probably the most annoying part of the Gates system, that you have to have specially designed triangles. I've even seen, if you look at some of my previous videos on this topic, and Alex Moulton, where they actually saw the triangle and they created a makeshift solution. That is not easy. It's a very difficult thing to do. Now here you can also see the original tensioner, but the little sprocket in it is not pushing the smooth back of it, but the front, which is also not so cool because it is introducing a lot of resistance. So now you have this wheel turning and there's another cog in the back, and you have this little sprocket as well. It is just pushing against the back of it, which is the best way to do the tensioning. That would not slow you down much. That would not be even a noticeable rolling resistance. But what you get with the Gates / Kinetic system is a new triangle that allows you to install a different hub. In this case, we see a roll of hub, but it could be a Shimano, it could be anything. If you stick to your Brompton as it is now, you cannot do any upgrades. Also, what you see here is a smaller, proper 16-inch rim. This is 305 millimeters instead of 349. And so he is able to load a much wider Schwalbe Big Apple tire, which is 2 inches wide. And the fact that the diameter is smaller just allows space so that the bigger, fatter tire fits in, which is really nice because you don't need to change anything else. He's even using the standard mudguards. Not the nicest solution, but it certainly does work. You can also install this disc brakes, which the Kinetic system supports, and there have to be attachments where you can attach it. It's very difficult to remanufacture a standard Brompton triangle or fork to attach something, to weld something on or braze something on that would allow you to install a hydraulic disc brake system, which of course a lot of people would want to do. Here is the Birdy. Now the Birdy is a seemingly very lucky type of engineering because you don't have a triangle. You have a very elegant rear dropout that does not really wrap around the chain but kind of hangs in. So you should be able to just take out everything and install the Gates belt drive as it is, because you have no triangle to worry about. What concerns me is that for a much wider belt, there might not be enough space up here, because you see that the chain is very close, and as a former Birdy rider, I used to be on the Birdy for 12 years. I noticed how tight the tolerances are. This is typical German engineering. Everything is very precise, very tight. The problem with that is it's very hard to tune or adjust anything. So what you might be able to do would be to put some washers here and to push out the crank to make more space here. I would not recommend trying to make an incision here into the frame or to file into the paint or anything like that. That would probably just destroy the frame. But if it fits, if you don't have to buy the VEER, then that's easy street. Here is the Moulton. As you see, most of the Moultons, except for the classic ones from the 70s and earlier, they have a triangle. And they are non-braking triangles, so the VEER system is the only one you can use, unless you're lucky enough to grab hold of the only belt drive Moulton ever made. This machine used to be on the market, and the people who bought it said that it's really easy to upgrade the rear hub. You can install a Shimano or a roll-off instead of what the bicycle comes with. There are still many of these used on the market. If you can get it, by all means get it. It already comes with the belt drive. You just need to upgrade the hub. You only need to upgrade the hub in order to get a relatively high performance machine. As you can see, there are 2 screws here, so the triangle is breaking. You have to remove these screws, and then a small gap opens up, and that's how you can replace the belt. And here's the very interesting, very cool looking Alex Moulton bike. This one has a VEER installed on it. This is not a gate system. It has a consistent single piece triangle as far as I can see it, but the rear has a tensioner. I don't know how this was done, how this was installed, but it looks really, really cool. I see some rivets here. So this looks like the VEER system. At least that's what it appears to be. Of course, if you're lucky enough to have a Pro Drive, or if you're on the market for one, they sell it with everything ready-made. You can get a single speed, or you can get a Shimano rear hub already installed. No sweat, no need to modify anything. That's great. Can you install a belt drive system on any of the recumbent bikes or velomobiles? Unfortunately, their chains are typically very long. I would only consider making that change on the Taxi, because the Taxi ZR has a front wheel drive, but even this one has an unusual chain size. There is no triangle to worry about, but look at this tensioning unit and this very complicated way that the chain drives the front wheel. So I would say no, you cannot do it, because this is still way too long and the path of it is way too complicated for any modification. So I'm afraid you have to stick with the upright bicycles we have been talking about. And I'm going to give you links below for all of the resources. Check out my book, check out my shop, and I'll be back with the next one.
I'll be back.